Somewhere in the universe, there may be a civilization that switched off a star. Not blew it up, not watched it die, switched it off, wrapped it so completely in machinery that not a single photon of its light escapes into space anymore. From the outside, that star would simply be gone. A hole where a sun used to be. And everything the star once poured uselessly into the empty dark would now be feeding a civilization we cannot begin to imagine. We have a scale for this, a ladder that ranks every possible civilization in the cosmos, from the lowest rung to something indistinguishable from a god. It was built by a Soviet scientist more than 60 years ago, and it is one of the few honest measuring sticks we have for our own place in the universe. And here is the part that should unsettle you. When you put humanity on that ladder, we do not even reach the first rung. This is the story of the scale that ranks all civilizations, where we actually stand on it, what waits above us, and the disturbing silence that greets us every time we look up and search for anyone who has climbed higher. Start with the man who drew the ladder. In 1964, a Soviet astronomer named Nikolai Kardashev was thinking about a very specific problem. If there are other civilizations out there, older than us, more advanced than us, how would we ever recognize one? You cannot rank an alien society by its art, or its politics, or its philosophy. Those things don't travel across light years. But there is one thing every civilization, anywhere in the universe, must obey. One currency that cannot be faked: energy. Everything a civilization does, every machine it builds, every signal it sends, every world it reshapes, costs energy. And the more advanced a civilization becomes, the more energy it must command. That is not a cultural assumption. It is physics. So Kardashev proposed ranking civilizations purely by the scale of the energy they control, not what they believe, what they can power. And there is a reason energy works as the one honest measure, because energy and technology feed each other in a loop that never stops turning. The more energy a civilization can command, the more advanced the technology it can build. And the more advanced its technology, the more energy it can reach out and capture. A society that unlocks a new power source unlocks new machines, and those machines unlock new power sources, and around it goes a self-reinforcing spiral that, given enough time, carries a civilization from campfires to the harnessing of stars. Every civilization that has ever existed anywhere is somewhere on that spiral. The only question is how far around it they have traveled. He drew 3 rungs. A Type 1 civilization controls all the energy available on its home planet. Every ray of sunlight that strikes the surface, every ounce of geothermal heat, every storm and tide and current, all of it harnessed, directed, used. A Type 1 species is the master of an entire world. A Type 2 civilization controls the entire energy output of its star. Not the fraction that happens to fall on one planet, the whole thing. Every second, the sun releases more energy than humanity has used in its entire history. A Type 2 civilization captures all of it. And a Type 3 civilization controls the energy of an entire galaxy. Hundreds of billions of stars harnessed. A civilization spread across the whole spiral, feeding on the light of 100 billion suns. 3 rungs: planet, star, galaxy. Simple, elegant, and when you measure the gaps between them, genuinely terrifying, because each step up is not a little more power. It is a leap so vast it barely fits in the human mind. Now here is where it gets uncomfortable, because before we climb that ladder, we have to find our own place on it. And we are not on it at all. Humanity does not qualify as a Type 1 civilization. We have not mastered our own planet's energy, not even close. We still tear most of our power out of the ground in the form of fossilized sunlight, buried hundreds of millions of years ago, and we burn it faster than we understand the consequences. On Kardashev's scale, a Type 1 civilization sits at a value of 1, a Type 2 at 2, a Type 3 at 3. Humanity, when you actually run the numbers, sits at around 0.73. We are a Type 0 civilization. We haven't reached the first rung. We are still on the ground, looking up at a ladder whose first step is already far above our heads. The physicist Michio Kaku put a timeline on the climb. If humanity keeps increasing its energy use by a few % a year, as we have for most of modern history, we might reach Type 1 in another 1 to 200 years, within striking distance, a handful of generations. Assuming, of course, that we survive that long. And whether we do is one of the darker questions hiding inside this entire scale, a question we will come back to. But first, imagine we make it. Imagine we climb. Picture a Type 1 humanity. The distinction between us and them would be almost total. A Type 1 civilization has no energy crisis because it has solved energy completely. It captures every photon its star throws at its world. It controls the weather, not endures it, controls it. It can quiet a hurricane, calm an earthquake, redirect the very forces that we currently flee from. It builds cities on the ocean and beneath it. It reshapes its own planet as easily as we landscape a garden. A Type 1 civilization is, from our perspective, effectively invulnerable to nature. The disasters that could still erase us, the storm, the quake, the eruption, are things they command. They are no longer at the mercy of their world. They are its master. And think about what the climb to that rung actually requires, because we are standing at the bottom of it right now. To become Type 1, humanity would have to abandon fossil fuels entirely, not slowly, not partially, but completely, and replace them with something vastly larger. Fusion, most likely, the same reaction that powers the sun, tamed and running in reactors on the ground, giving us clean, effectively limitless energy from seawater. We would have to blanket our deserts in collectors, tap the heat of the planet's core, capture the tides and the winds and the sunlight all at once. We would have to become, in effect, a single coordinated species. Because you cannot run a planet's entire energy system while fractured into hundreds of squabbling nations pulling in opposite directions. A Type 1 civilization is not just a technological achievement. It is a political one. It requires a species that has learned to act as one. That right there may be the hardest part of the entire climb. Not the physics, the cooperation. And yet a Type 1 civilization is still, in the grand scheme, fragile, still bound to a single planet, still vulnerable to the one thing that can end any species trapped on one world, a large enough asteroid, a nearby exploding star, a mistake with a technology they don't fully understand. To truly escape extinction, a civilization has to leave the cradle. It has to reach up to the next rung. It has to learn to swallow a star. This is the leap to Type 2. And the scale of it is almost impossible to hold in your head. Because the amount of energy in all the sunlight that ever strikes a planet is a rounding error compared to what the star itself is producing every single second. To go from Type 1 to Type 2, a civilization has to stop living off the crumbs its star drops onto one world and start capturing the entire meal. And more than 60 years ago, a physicist worked out how they might do it. His name was Freeman Dyson, and the structure he imagined now carries his name, a Dyson Sphere. The idea is staggering in its simplicity. If you want all of a star's energy, you build around it. You surround the star with a shell, or more realistically, an enormous swarm of orbiting collectors, billions of them, a cloud of machinery so vast it encloses the sun completely. Every ray of light the star emits strikes one of your collectors. Nothing escapes, nothing is wasted, and the way you would actually build one is its own kind of nightmare of scale. You would not construct a solid shell. That turns out to be structurally impossible. It would tear itself apart. Instead, you would build a swarm, billions upon billions of individual collectors, each in its own orbit, together forming a cloud that gradually closes around the star. And to build that many collectors, you would need raw material, a planet's worth of it. So a Type 2 civilization would likely take a world it does not need, a small, rocky planet like Mercury, and dismantle it, tear the entire planet apart, atom by atom, and reforge it into a shell of machinery around the sun. That is the scale we are talking about. A civilization that treats an entire planet as a pile of construction material to be strip-mined out of existence. A civilization that builds a Dyson Sphere has access to energy on a scale that dwarfs anything we can meaningfully picture. Enough to power computers the size of moons. Enough to move planets. Enough, some have speculated, to manipulate the fabric of space itself. A Type 2 civilization could reshape its entire solar system, terraform every world, build habitats for trillions. It would be, in Kardashev's own words, almost godlike, and crucially, it would be almost impossible to kill. This is the real prize of the second rung, not just power, but permanence. A civilization spread across an entire star system, drawing on the full output of its sun, is no longer vulnerable to the things that can end a species trapped on one planet. An asteroid can wipe out a world. It cannot wipe out a civilization that lives on 1,000 worlds and structures at once. A Type 2 civilization has, in a very real sense, escaped extinction. It could survive for billions of years, long enough to watch its own star age and die, and to simply move on, or to keep that star burning artificially long past its natural life. Where a Type 0 civilization like ours could be erased in an afternoon, a Type 2 civilization is built to outlast the stars themselves. And here is the thing that turns this from science fiction into something colder. We may have already seen a star behaving as if something were being built around it. In 2015, the Kepler Space Telescope was staring at a patch of sky in the constellation Cygnus, watching for the tiny, regular dimming that happens when a planet crosses in front of its star. And it found a star that made no sense. Officially, it's called KIC 8462852. Most people know it as Tabbys star, after the astronomer who led the study of it. It sits about 1,400 light-years away, and it does something no ordinary star should do. It dims, dramatically, irregularly, by as much as 20% at a time. Think about how strange that is. When a planet the size of Jupiter passes in front of a star, it blocks maybe 1% of the light. Tabbys star was dropping by 20, and not on any predictable schedule. Sudden, deep, chaotic dips, unlike anything in the catalogue of known stellar behavior. Something big and irregular was passing in front of that star, something that didn't match a planet, or a simple orbit, or any tidy natural explanation. For a brief electric moment, some astronomers said out loud the thing everyone was thinking. What if it's a structure? What if we are watching an alien megastructure, a half-built Dyson Sphere, passing in front of its sun? Now, the scientific consensus has since drifted toward more natural explanations. A vast cloud of dust, a swarm of fragmented comets, nothing that requires an alien engineer. Probably, and that word, probably, is where the discomfort lives. Because the honest truth is that we found a star doing something we could not fully explain. And one of the explanations on the table, seriously, for a time, was that we were looking at the work of a Type 2 civilization. We had the technology to detect the shadow of a megastructure before we had any way to rule it out. And if a Type 2 civilization is godlike, then what sits on the third rung is something the human language was simply never built to describe. A Type 3 civilization does not harness a star. It harnesses a galaxy. Every star in the spiral, 100 billion of them, maybe more, put to work. Imagine a Dyson Sphere not around one sun, but around every sun. An entire galaxy dismantled and rebuilt into machinery, its every star wrapped and drained, the whole structure blazing with harnessed power on the far side, while from the outside going strangely, deliberately dark. A Type 3 civilization would move through the galaxy on timescales that make our entire recorded history look like a single breath. They would command energies drawn from supernovae, from the collisions of neutron stars, from black holes themselves. They could, in principle, manipulate the shape of space and time. To a Type 3 civilization, a planet like ours would not be a world. It would be a pebble, a single grain, in a structure so large they might never even notice it was inhabited. Try to feel the size of that for a moment. A Type 3 civilization would not send ships between stars the way we imagine in our stories. A lonely vessel crossing the dark for a generation. It would have colonized so completely that the entire galaxy was its home, every system settled, every star put to use, the whole 200,000 light-year disk humming with a single civilization's activity. It would have had to solve travel across distances that light itself takes tens of thousands of years to cross. It would command energies drawn not just from stars, but from the most violent events in the universe. The detonation of supernovae, the collision of neutron stars, the slow, inexorable gravity of black holes. To a Type 3 civilization, our entire solar system, the sun, the planets, everything humanity has ever known or touched, would be a single, flickering point among 100 billion others. Not a world, not even a landmark, a pebble on the shore of something unimaginably larger. Estimates suggest that if such a civilization exists anywhere in our corner of the universe, it is extraordinarily rare, but the mathematics of the scale says it should be possible. The physics permits it. Nothing in the laws of nature forbids a civilization from climbing all the way to the top of Kardashev's ladder. And if you've made it this far up the ladder with me, through planets and stars and galaxies swallowed whole, do me one small favor. Take a second and subscribe to the Cosmic Deep. This channel exists to chase exactly these questions all the way to the edge, and subscribing is the one thing that tells YouTube to carry the next story to you instead of letting it vanish into the dark. That's it. Now, let's climb higher. Because Kardashev drew 3 rungs, but he may have stopped far too early. Because some scientists looked at that ladder and asked a dangerous question. Why stop at 3? Why stop at a galaxy? And so the scale was extended into territory that stops sounding like astronomy and starts sounding like theology. A Type 4 civilization would command the energy of an entire galactic supercluster, not one galaxy, but thousands of them, bound together across hundreds of millions of light years. A civilization that treats galaxies the way we treat bricks, rearranging them, building with them, erasing the ones it doesn't need. A Type 5 civilization would control the energy of the entire observable universe, every galaxy, every star, all of it. And beyond that, the scale climbs into ideas that barely hold together. A Type 6 civilization existing outside of space and time entirely, capable of creating universes and destroying them. A Type 7, a hypothetical Omega civilization, for which the creation of entire multiverses is not a miracle, but a routine act of engineering. Beings of pure energy, no longer bound by matter, no longer bound by time, moving between dimensions the way we move between rooms. At that point, the ladder stops being a measurement and becomes a mirror. Because what we are really describing at the top of the Kardashev scale is God, arrived at not through faith, but through physics, through nothing more exotic than a civilization that kept climbing, kept gathering energy, and never stopped. And that is the thought that should hold you. Because if the ladder goes that high, if the physics really does permit civilizations of that power, then the universe is old enough and vast enough that some of them should already exist. The cosmos has been around for nearly 14 billion years. That is more than enough time for a civilization to get a head start of millions of years on us. 10 million years, 100 million. On the scale of the universe, that is nothing, and a civilization even 10,000 years ahead of us should already be blazing across the sky as a Type 2 or Type 3. So where are they? To feel the full weight of that question, you have to understand how much time the universe has had. Our sun is about 4.5 billion years old, but the universe itself is nearly 14 billion years old, which means there were stars and planets and all the ingredients for life for billions of years before our sun even formed. If a civilization arose on one of those older worlds, it could have a head start on us not of centuries, but of billions of years. And remember how fast the climb can be. Michio Kaku's estimate put humanity perhaps 2 centuries from Type 1, and a Type 2 civilization might follow within a few thousand years after that, and a Type 3 within a few 100,000. Set that against the age of the universe, and those numbers vanish into nothing. A civilization with even a million-year head start, a cosmic eye blink, should already be a Type 3, blazing across its galaxy. A civilization a billion years ahead of us should have spread far beyond a single galaxy entirely. The galaxy should be full of them. The universe should be crowded with the works of the ancients. Every reasonable estimate says that in 14 billion years, someone should have climbed the ladder to the top, and their fingerprints should be everywhere we look. This is the question that turns the entire Kardashev scale from a fascinating thought experiment into something genuinely frightening. Because we have looked, we keep looking, and the sky is silent. We have surveyed hundreds of thousands of galaxies, specifically searching for the heat signature a Type 3 civilization would leave behind, because even a civilization that captures all of a star's light still has to dump waste heat, and a galaxy full of Dyson spheres would glow in the infrared in a way that natural galaxies do not. Astronomers ran exactly that survey. They examined 100,000 galaxies looking for that telltale glow. They found nothing. No galaxy lit up with the fingerprint of a civilization that had harnessed it. Not one clear case in 100,000. We look at the stars, and none of them have gone dark in the way a Dyson Sphere would require. We listen for signals, and we hear static. We search for the megastructures, and we find dust and comets and natural explanations. The universe, as far as our instruments can tell, is empty of anyone who climbed the ladder above us. And there are only a few ways to explain that silence, and none of them are comfortable. Maybe we are simply first. Maybe, against staggering odds, humanity is one of the earliest civilizations to arise in the entire cosmos, and the ladder above us is empty because no one has climbed it yet. That would make us the ancestors, the ones the future looks back on. It is a lonely thought, but a survivable one. Or maybe the climb is simply impossible. Maybe there is some wall in the physics we haven't hit yet. Some reason no civilization ever actually reaches Type 2, no matter how advanced it gets. Maybe the Dyson Sphere is a fantasy that always stays a fantasy. Or maybe, and this is the explanation that should keep you up at night, maybe civilizations climb and then they die. Maybe there is a filter, a barrier somewhere on the ladder that almost nothing gets past, a point at which advancing civilizations reliably destroy themselves. Think about what a civilization is doing as it approaches Type 1. It is learning to command the full energy of its world. That means technologies of almost unimaginable power. The same mastery of energy that lets you control the weather, lets you unmake a continent. The same command of physics that lets you swallow a star could, in the wrong instant, swallow you. And the terrifying possibility is that the transition from Type 0 to Type 1, the exact rung humanity is climbing right now, is the most dangerous step of all. The moment a civilization gains world-ending power before it has gained the wisdom to survive holding it. Scientists have a name for this idea. They call it the Great Filter. The notion that somewhere between dead matter and a galaxy-spanning civilization, there is a barrier, a step so difficult or so dangerous that almost nothing makes it through. And the most important question humanity can possibly ask is a simple one. Is the filter behind us or ahead of us? If the filter is behind us, if the hard part was the origin of life itself, or the leap from simple cells to complex ones, some fluke so improbable it almost never happens anywhere, then we are the lucky survivors. We have already passed the test. The road ahead is open, and the silence is just the sound of us being early and rare and alone in a way that means we made it. But if the filter is ahead of us, if the barrier is not the birth of a civilization, but the survival of one, then the silence is something else entirely. Then every civilization that ever climbed toward the stars hit the same wall we are about to reach, and none of them got past it. And the wall would sit right about here, at the transition we are living through. The moment a species gains the power to reshape its whole world before it has gained the wisdom not to destroy it. Nuclear weapons, engineered plagues, a climate pushed past the point of return, technologies we build faster than we learn to control. Every one of them a candidate for the thing that ends the climb. If that is true, then the silence in the sky is not empty. It is a warning. Every dark, quiet galaxy is a graveyard of civilizations that reached for the next rung and fell. And we are approaching the same rung, right now, with the same reckless hunger for energy that got us here, burning our planet to climb a ladder that may have already killed everyone who came before us. We sit at 0.73. We are perhaps a century or two from Type 1. That is the blink of an eye in cosmic time. And it is also precisely the stretch of the climb, where, if there is a filter, we would expect to meet it. Kardashev built his scale to help us find civilizations greater than our own. He gave us a ladder to measure the giants we assumed were out there. And when we finally built the instruments to look, we found the ladder empty above us, and a silence we still cannot fully explain. Maybe they're out there, hidden so far beyond us that we cannot even recognize their handiwork. A Type 3 civilization so advanced that an entire galaxy going dark just looks to us like empty space. Maybe we are alone at the bottom because we are the first. Or maybe the rung we are standing on is the last one a lot of civilizations ever reach. The scale doesn't tell us which, it only tells us where we stand, at the very bottom. Looking up, about to take the most dangerous step of all. Thank you for watching. If you want more of the questions that sit just past the edge of what we can prove, the vast, the strange, and the quietly terrifying, subscribe to the Cosmic Deep, and I'll see you in the dark.